Democratic Alliance has this week won the Cederberg Municipality as well as the Bothasig in the Cape Metro following two crucial by-elections in the Western Cape. In KwaZulu-Natal, the IFP recorded its second win with a big upset in the uMuziwabantu area. For more on what this means for the 2024 polls, we are joined by election analyst Wayne Sussman as well as IFP KZN Executive Committee member Thami Ntuli. And taking your thoughts this evening on 072-110-5584, is the Democratic Alliance on its way to winning the 2024 provincial elections in the Western Cape, or is the Patriotic Alliance a strong alternative for that province in terms of the governance of the Western Cape? What are your thoughts tonight? 072-110-5584. Wayne, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for joining us. So, three consequential by-elections where the Democratic Alliance has now consecutively won in the province. Let's look at the Cederberg particular district and what is happening there. Very crucial election, I suppose, for the Democratic Alliance here, because what had happened previously is that one of their members defected and voted with the ANC Patriotic Alliance coalition and ousted the mayor that was there. He was then taken off the party to now defect to the Patriotic Alliance. And this is what gave rise to these by-elections. Put us in the picture.
Sure. So when we look at by-elections, we must look at local factors. You asked me earlier about 2024, and we're going to get there now. But first of all, this was a consequential by-election because the DA retaining the seat would now return to the numbers it and its coalition partners, which is the local party, Cederberg Municipality, and the Freedom Front, had after the 2021 local government elections. Because this DA councillor who defected to the Patriotic Alliance scuppered the numbers. So this means that the Cederberg Municipality will have their mayor re-elected, the DA will regain the speaker position, and the Freedom Front will get the deputy mayor position. So that is a short-term victory for the DA. This particular by-election was also a very, very important victory because we've seen three key by-elections in a row where there were very, very strong local factors, local personalities. These towns are very well-defined areas, and the DA have won all three. They retained the ward now in Cederberg, in the town of Lambert's Bay, the fishing town of Lambert's Bay, but they were given a big fright by the Patriotic Alliance. Yeah. So yes, they're happy that they won, but the Patriotic Alliance are knocking on the door. But one caveat, because you spoke about 2024, where these by-elections have been are in relatively rural parts of the province. We've got to remember that in the Western Cape province, the overwhelming amount of voters are in the city of Cape Town and in towns like Stellenbosch and Paarl, where about 80% of the voters are in the Western Cape. So we've got to keep that in mind. Yet yes, this boosts momentum for the Democratic Alliance and will encourage their activists, but there's a lot more to be done for them to be sure about 2024.
So 6 out of the 11 seats now sitting with the Democratic Alliance, FF Plus, and Cederberg Municipality movement coalition, which of course means the PA is still with the ANC, but the PA saw quite a jump here from, 11% to about 37% of the votes?
It was from about 8% to 35%, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So this was a remarkable surge by the Patriotic Alliance. But again, we've got to look at the local factors. So give credit where credit's due. The Patriotic Alliance have huge momentum. They are showing now that they are a force to be reckoned with in Western Cape politics. But William Farmer, the former DA councillor who defected to the Patriotic Alliance, was also a very well-known person. He was trying to win election now for the third time in Lambert's Bay. So did they do especially well because of him? Or was it a combination of a variety of reasons? Yes, they have a lot of momentum, but in particular, as I said earlier, in these very well-defined areas where it's clear what the boundaries of the town are, this could have also been a factor. And the DA fielded a very well-known candidate, and so did the Cederberg Municipality. So these local characters or local personalities can boost a party support, and I think that was the case here in the Cederberg by-election.
Dr. Hayes versus Farmer Williams, in terms of that particular dynamic, what actually happened here? Because others are saying, well, some of the FF Plus. People went to the Democratic Alliance, while some of the DA left with William Farmer and went to the PA.
So what transpired the day after the by-election, when Corné Mulder from the Freedom Front, he issued a statement to say, look, the DA needs to give the Freedom Front and its coalition partner, the Cederberg Municipality, some credit. They weren't contesting the by-elections, and they encouraged people to vote for the Democratic Alliance. It wasn't a public endorsement, but it was clear that Mulder was upset about it. So there was an arrangement that those two parties would not stand in the by-election. But what was very, very interesting here is that, yes, the Freedom Front voters went back to the Democratic Alliance, but some of the Cederberg voters went to the Democratic Alliance, but I'm very certain that a lot of them also went over to the Patriotic Alliance, and the Patriotic Alliance were able to attract DA voters. And ANC voters. So the Patriotic Alliance were taking from a whole host of parties and the DA from some parties.
Let's go to the IFP then in Ward 11. Ntuli, good evening, and thank you very much for your time. The IFP going from not showing at all in the ballots in November in this particular district to actually coming up with a very good showing.
Good evening, and to your viewers. In fact, IFP is on an ascending mode, not only for the Ward 11, where we recently had a by-election. When you trace back 2016, having 11 municipalities, and in 2021, 29 municipalities, and now for the 5 consecutive by-elections, the IFP has been winning all the by-elections. What is remarkable is that the 2 by-elections were the stronghold wards for the ANC, and hence the recent one, Ward 11 we're talking about, where the IFP got more than 1,000 and the ANC with only 355, which to us as the IFP is confirming that our journey is continuing to be ascending, and is bringing hope that in 2024 the IFP is ready to govern back the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And we know that that is not just happening. It's because of the track record that the IFP has, and in particular in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, when it comes to the infrastructural investment, when you talk about the issues of schools, universities and colleges, and even making the environment conducive for investment, that created jobs at the time when the IFP was governing this province of KwaZulu-Natal. I think when the people of KwaZulu-Natal are disparate now because of the circumstances that they are faced with, the only party they can be able to compare with what, yes, it has done is the IFP in the province of KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah. What do you think was the role of the Sizwa Uma Nation and, of course, Al-Jamaa not participating at all in these by-elections? So from being the dominant party in 2021 to actually not showing at all in the ballot?
Well, they were there because the Al-Jamaa councillor, the former Al-Jamaa now, because he's now was standing for the Sun, the very same person who resigned, also they participated in these elections, and they got more than 500 votes, with the IFP getting more than 1,000 votes. I think the issue of trust, again, maybe for someone who was elected in November last year, resigned and wants to be re-elected, I think might have been the factor for him not to enjoy the support. But what we realized in particular in that Ward 11 is that people, they were really on the circumstances which were not good at all. And when we emerged as the IFP, they asked us where have we been, because they know the work that we did for the area at the time when the IFP was governing that district. And the last time they could enjoy the infrastructural development was when the IFP was governing that region.
It's a crowded field, one would say, with IFP, ANC, we've got the ABC, you've got ATM as well, and then Sizwa Uma Nation. You think those parties are not going to play any significant role at all in terms of the voter numbers that would be supporting the IFP?
Well, what actually happened even in that Ward 11 and even in the previous by-elections is I've indicated that amongst the 5 wards, there are 2 by-elections that we have won, 2 are from the ANC strongholds. And amongst the people who voted for us, there was from different parties. In particular, the majority were from the ANC, with their own concerns pertaining to what the ANC is doing while governing. And then when checking to the history, I've mentioned the work that the IFP has been able to provide at the time the IFP was governing KwaZulu-Natal. And we are enjoying the support of different people who are coming from different political parties, but in the main, most of them were from the ANC.
When IFP sees UMA not in the ballot in November, and this time around their vote literally combined, it's about 80% of the town vote that went to these 2 parties, IFP of course taking a lion's share of that.
Correct. It's a stunning, we don't often see shifts like this in by-elections. The IFP got 0 votes in the town of Harding, which is the main part of Ward 11. It's by far where most of the voters are concentrated. They got over 843 votes this time. It's a stunning shift. And as Mr. Ntuli says, we also saw this a few weeks ago in uMuziwabantu, near Richards Bay, in a township near Richards Bay, a very safe ANC seat. The IFP won that handsomely as well. So the IFP have a tremendous amount of momentum. These kinds of shifts we are seeing in by-elections are not normal. Normally you see modest shifts, but here we're seeing seismic shifts towards the IFP, and the party has a tremendous amount of momentum. And remember, a lot of people thought that once Mangosuthu Buthelezi stood down as the president of the IFP, and Mr. Chlabisa took over, that the IFPs would see a reversal of fortunes. But Mr. Chlabisa has continued the good fortune of the IFP, as Mr. Ntuli says, from 2016 onward, and they are now winning not only by-elections, but if you look at where the IFP is now governing, they are governing in places like Alfred Duma, Ladysmith. They are governing in places like uMuziwabantu and Richards Bay. They are governing in places like Newcastle. These are stunning developments, and that is why the IFP was one of the major success stories of the 2021 local government election, and that trend is continuing in by-elections. And there's a lot of interesting by-elections coming up in KwaZulu-Natal, including where the IFP has to defend some tough seats. But if the IFP can win those tough seats and take a few more seats off the ANC, it will be a brilliant 2022 for them.
Is the ANC concerned, and should they be concerned about their performance, particularly in these areas?
Definitely so. Remember, Siboniso Duma took over as the ANC provincial leader. They actually won a by-election, a very competitive by-election. They won a DA seat, I think, a few days after he took the reins. So that would have boosted his momentum and his case as to why he should have been the leader of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. But since then, the loss in Mhlatuzu was very concerning. And look, it was an Al-Jamaa seat, but the ANC didn't do well. We will remember that in 2016, the ANC had 70% of the seats in uMuziwabantu. And now they are under 50% of the seats. The ANC are reliant on other party support to keep that mayoral chain. There's a by-election coming up soon in Alfred Duma and Ladysmith. I was looking at the numbers today. The ANC won 46 seats there in 2016. They fell to 28 seats in 2021. So you're seeing these shifts. Yes, you expected to see some shifts towards the IFP Northern KwaZulu-Natal, but this by-election win in the Southern KwaZulu-Natal, which was Jacob Zuma's heartland in the ANC, that was Jacob Zuma's gift to the ANC. You're now seeing the IFP win by-elections there, and the ANC's got a lot of work to do. But those who read my articles, it takes me a long time to write parties off, so I think the ANC can turn it around, but they would be very concerned right now.
Did this come as a result, as you put it, I mean, previously stronghold of the ANC, great support for Jacob Zuma. When you look at the voter turnout, does it mean people showed up and voted IFP, or people stayed at home and said, we're not going to go and participate?
The turnout in the uMuziwabantu by-election was a very good turnout. That means that people who voted for the ANC and obviously Al-Jamaa as well, voted for other parties, particularly the IFP this time round. So those shifts are real. It wasn't just because the IFP won because of low voter turnout. Let me just make one general observation. Voter turnouts have generally been very good since 2021, and it shows that more and more voters who stayed away in the local government elections, remember we had a record low turnout, are now turning out and voting and participating in these by-elections, and that's very encouraging.
Babantu, as the IFP, how do you plan to hold on to these gains, especially in these 5 critical wards that you've mentioned?
Well, in particular, the recent Ward 11, we had a discussion as the provincial leadership that the issues which are issues of concerns, we need to monitor closely the new councillor there, whether he's really delivering what is expected. And all the councillors that have won during the by-elections, they will be signing an oath with the IFP to serve the people with integrity. And as the IFP, we're also monitoring closely where we're governing to try and ensure that the issues of service delivery, though we always lament that local government is not really enjoying its sufficient equitable share since it's only receiving 9%, and KwaZulu-Natal is rural. But as the IFP, we believe that we have been in the game in the very rural at a time where the minimal investment was actually made by the national government in the province. And we believe that the relationship working closer with the people and monitoring our councillors will assist us. And our system, because what is also very important I would like to mention, though the founder and the president emeritus of the IFP is no longer in the reign, but his legacy, in fact, is still a story that resonates with the voters in the main. When people vote, they vote considering the legacy that is leaving behind, and also the commitment the IFP is showing, even our manifesto that we had, with the way it was friendly to the constituents of KwaZulu-Natal. I think that is what is assisting us. And for the by-elections, because we'll be facing, as the analyst was correctly saying, that very soon there are many by-elections in KwaZulu-Natal. I think there are around 7 or 8 by-elections soon. And as the IFP, some are our wards, IFP wards, and some are ANC wards. We believe even in those by-elections, as the IFP will be fighting very hard to win even those that are not IFP awards.
So if I look at the uMuziwabantu council composition, looks like the ANC continues to have majority seats there, IFP having 6, if I'm correct, Al-Jamaa with 1, ABC with 1. I mean, if for example, the partnership between the ABC and the ANC continues and Al-Jamaa continues, it means that particular coalition still holds the mayoral chain. And they are still going to be controlling that particular council. Do you think that will stand in the way of what the IFP wants to do?
Well, not necessary. You know, to correct in that municipality, you need 11, and the ANC has 10, and they are supported by only one party with 1 seat, which is the APC. And we are of the view as the IFP that the issues of coalitions, discussions amongst the councillors concerning being informed, in fact, by what is happening in the area might turn things around. And we've just overheard, we've heard the voice clip of one of the councillors who have resigned, and we have heard that the ANC is refusing to send the letter to IEC so that there could be a by-election. I think the issue could be that that seat is crucial for them, because if that seat, they may lose that seat, that will take them to 10 even with a seat from the APC, which will take the mayoral chain to the coalition bloc.
Yeah. How strong is that coalition between the ANC and the ABC in this particular council?
Well, the ABC, remember, this is a party formed by Mr. Vundla, a businessman from Greytown and Mvoti, who's now the Deputy Mayor of eThekwini.
Yeah, right.
And I see he's running in a by-election, a very safe DA seat soon, which will be an interesting experience for him. I think that coalition, look, the ABC works with the IFP in some councils in KwaZulu-Natal, and they work with the ANC in other councils. I agree with Mr. Ntuli, but Al-Jamaa has traditionally worked with the ANC.
That's right.
So even, I've also heard a rumor that there's another by-election coming up. But I mean, the ANC doesn't want to be in a position where it relies on too many parties. We now know in Nelson Mandela Bay, sorry to swap provinces and go quickly to the Eastern Cape, but there, the DA's coalition's 10 parties. The ANC's depend on many coalition partners in the city of Johannesburg. This could lead to one councillor or one party jumping ship, and the whole infrastructure of that coalition could come tumbling down. And that's why I think we're going to continue to see this period of uncertainty with coalitions. So right now, the ANC do still have the upper hand in uMuziwabantu. They'll be wanting to be drinking tea with Al-Jamaa and drinking tea with the ABC party. But it is flimsy, particularly if we go to a by-election, the ANC was to suffer another shock defeat.
Let's take a break, and when we continue, we'll take more of your thoughts. 072-110-5584. What you make of the performance of various parties during last week's by-election. Is this an indication of parties like IFP being on track for elections in 2024? Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape on track for 2024? Or are there other alternative parties that are beginning to emerge? And what do you make of the role that civic and independent candidates are beginning to play in these by-elections? We'll put that to Wayne also when we continue next. Stay with us. Back with you live tonight. You're on In Focus, Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405. Thanks for staying on, looking closely at, of course, the outcomes of the by-elections. This has created a lot of traffic on social medias amongst the various parties. Parties certainly showing that they will use these by-elections to some extent to best position their parties for the elections in 2024. What are your thoughts on that? You can weigh in on 072-110-5584. Before we get to that answer, when we didn't talk about the Cape Town Ward 5, Edgewood and Bothasig area. This is the area where Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis comes from. How did the DA perform? They previously 90%, dropped a little bit, losing some support to ACDP, which performed really well in 2021 in that area, but it seems they've taken back that control. Yeah,
the DA had a very, very big win there. Turnout was low, but turnout's generally low in metro by-elections, whether it's in suburbs or townships. Turnout tends to be higher in by-elections in rural areas. But again, the DA will be satisfied with that result because it will mean that they're on track in the Western Cape, not elsewhere, on the road to 2024. But I mean, the real prize in the Western Cape are places like Mitchell's Plain and Athlone. And we need to see some by-elections there, because if the DA continues to do well there, that would be a very, very good sign for them. You'd expect them to do well in a seat like Edgemead and Bothasig. It's DA heartland. But at the end of the day, you still need to get your voters out, and they got their voters out, and they'll be very happy with that win. And the ACDP grew somewhat as well, but it's a super safe DA seat. And just the question about Edgemead Bothasig. When you look at by-elections, because I track every by-election, like for the next 2 weeks, the ANC has a pretty good hand with by-elections, where there can be by-elections in a rural part of Mpumalanga and then in Mthatha. Those are traditional ANC strongholds, and the ANC will have the opportunity to reverse the narrative what has emerged from the latest round of by-elections, where they underperformed in uMuziwabantu and underperformed in Cederberg. What is the conversation like currently within the IFP around coalitions? We saw the Democratic Alliance coming out on Friday pushing, for example, for legislation that would
govern the coalition arrangements in a sense, to say, you don't see smaller parties that come with one seat being the kingmaker, so to speak. So put some tighter legislation on that. Seeing that this is going to be the future where civic organization, independent candidates, particularly in these local government elections, are going to play a role. Is the IFP having a conversation on how to stabilize these coalitions?
Yes, Mfumbati, at the center of our conversation is the IFP, service delivery and service delivery and service delivery. Because we believe one thing that will sustain these coalitions is for the municipalities to be able to do what is right. And we understand that the issues of coalitions are not issues that are easy to manage. But we always have a conversation where we stress the issue of acknowledging other parties who are contributing to the governance in that specific municipality. And we believe if we keep on that standard, they are going to last, because the stability is quite very important to ensure that service delivery takes place, because if there is no stability in local government,
we seem to have lost the audio there from Mr. Thami Ntuli. Let's hope that we can get him back in just a moment. So, speaking of the showing of, Abudu was mentioning earlier on, for example, the legacy of the Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is continuing to play somewhat of a role in terms of the showing of the people at the ballot. We spoke of the Zuma influence, not necessarily turning out in these particular by-elections. But also, when you look at what happened in Ward 11 in the Western Cape, Gwede Mantashe, I think, went there and did a showing. There have been some national leadership doing some campaigning. I think Helen Zille also would have been there. Does that actually play any role? Does it actually influence in any way the outcomes of these elections?
Definitely. I think Gayton McKenzie was in the Cederberg, and I think Helen Zille was there on election day. You saw 3 government ministers from the ANC campaign in the Cederberg. There's a by-election coming up in Nkomazi in rural Mpumalanga this week. You had an ANC deputy minister from the government there. It definitely helps. And we've also understood that Mr. Glabisa, the leader of the IFP, he personally has spent a lot of time touring southern KwaZulu-Natal, and I'm sure he campaigned uMuziwabantu. It's been a personal project of his and the party's. So I do, and remember, they're doing it, yes, to win a by-election. Yes, it could mean to strengthen the coalition or entrench your control of that municipality. So those things matter in the short term, but also politicians have one eye on 2024. And that's why they want to make sure that they can control the narrative and win these by-elections. Because what the IFP has now done in uMhlathuze and uMuziwabantu changes the narrative of KwaZulu-Natal politics. They are winning by-elections in the north, in the south, and their activists and their leaders will be so much more inspired. And that's why I think you want to win the by-election more than an argument on social media, because it really counts for something, and it can mean you controlling that municipality or if you lose it, being relegated to the opposition benches.
Yeah. Are we beginning to see a picture emerge on the hand of civic society organizations and independent candidates playing a role, particularly at the local government level?
We've got to differentiate between those two categories. So again, we spoke about Cederberg. There, a local party called Cederberg Eerste will now get the mayoral chain back. We are seeing in KwaZulu-Natal a whole host of regional or local parties winning the odd seat or the odd 2 seats across the province. So it's local parties, civic parties, regional parties. Then on the independent front, we're seeing quite a lot of independent councillors play critical roles in municipalities. But what's playing out, and I spoke about Nkomazi earlier, is that there was a lot of ANC fighting in Nkomazi, which is by the Komatipoort area, which borders Eswatini and Mozambique, but also in Mkondo, the Patriotic area. We're going to see a lot of by-elections there because there's been tremendous ANC infighting. And those candidates who fall out of favor of the ANC, who've had to resign their seats, often run as independents. And to date, they haven't been winning these by-elections. So we've always had to differentiate between the local civic parties and the independents. I think civic parties are having more of an impact on local government now than the odd independent. Because an independent's only one person. It's not a big block.
Yeah.
Whereas a local party like Cederberg Municipality, they have 3 seats in the Cederberg coalition. They're the largest opposition party, and that's why they're with the mayoral chain now.
Ntuli, I'm going to come back to you. So you are saying for the stability of coalitions, the parties with probably more seats need to pay particular attention and recognize the contribution in governance that is being made by the smaller parties. That's what you would emphasize.
Absolutely. Even if you may have bigger numbers, but when you are governing supported by other parties, it's always important that for any decision to make in the council, the issue of consultation with all the parties is always quite very important, and even to ensure that what the agenda we are pushing in that specific municipality is informed by the wish of the people and the will of the people. I think in that way, it creates a healthy environment within the coalition government, because there are municipalities such as Mhlathuze, where you know that there are no issues. Many parties are forming a coalition government, but the municipality is stable, and many more. But it's easy to only do that when proper consultation on issues is actually done and the focus is service delivery, addressing the will of the people. Otherwise, you lose it if you begin to deviate from that one.
Yeah. Are you saying as the IFP particularly, you are not really looking at securing particular positions, for example, MMC positions or particular position in certain chairs? Because, for example, if you look at what has happened in the Johannesburg Council, they're saying part of the reason of what happened there is because there was this horse trading that was taking place, and other parties would get a better position, maybe as MMC for finance or MMC for economic development and so on and so forth. It is not critical for the IFP.
Well, I'm speaking here as the chairperson of the IFP in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. The system of KwaZulu-Natal is quite different from the system of other provinces. Like in our case, even in the metro, we don't have MMCs. And the IFP is not driven by positions, but we are driven by making a meaningful contribution, which is informed by the will of the people in any government. That is what we always emphasize to our deployees, that at the center of their mind and their contribution, they must always ensure that what Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi stood for, being servants of the people, must be a reflection of ourselves as the IFP deployees in various government. Hence, you know, the other very interesting thing is that when we went for the local government elections, we're using the face of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and even now for the by-election, the very same face is quite very influential.
So the conversation, Wayne, is always around whether or not we need this multi-competitor type elections in the country, or we need to at least have 2 parties that are competing like some other parts of the world. I mean, is the outcomes of what we are seeing now justifying this multi-competitor elections that we have, or multi-party democracy as we put it in South Africa?
Well, it's easy to, there's no threshold in South African politics, so what that means is that in some countries there's 3.25% or 5% which you need to qualify to get into council or to parliament. South Africa doesn't have that. If you get the minimum amount needed, you can get into a council or parliament or provincial legislature. So what we are seeing is that more and more South Africans are forming parties, they're breakaway parties. KwaZulu-Natal, there are many. There was the NFP which broke away from the IFP, and then I think there were about 3 parties which broke away from the NFP. So you're going to see more and more examples of this. It won't be ideal if it means that there's a collapse in service delivery, but I think South Africans are going to become more accustomed to it, particularly around the 2024 election, where people will see that the ANC on a national level and that the DA beyond the Western Cape on a national level are quite vulnerable right now. I think you're going to see quite a lot of entrance, and this multi-competitor political system's here to stay.
The suggestion by the Democratic Alliance for Parliament to sit around and come up with legislation to govern multi-party coalition agreements, do you see that taking off? And is it something that you think would be necessary for stability?
Yeah, the University of Western Cape have done some great work on this, and I think we do need agreements on how coalitions should be formed, i.e. a position like the Speaker position, in my opinion, shouldn't be taken by a party with 1 seat. It's a very senior position. It should be one of the senior coalition partner seats. Coalitions should become predictable in South Africa. That when we go to bed on election night and we wake up in Johannesburg or Tshwane or Ekurhuleni or eThekwini and there's a coalition, the coalition negotiation should make sense, i.e. the final outcome should be something which we can anticipate, that the biggest party will get the treasured prize, the mayoral chain, that there's a mechanism which will be easy to follow. And when coalitions are about to collapse, instead of them collapsing because of the whim or fancy of one particular councillor, I think that there should be a remedy to try and mediate and sort out those differences so we don't just collapse councils like what happened in Nelson Mandela Bay between 2016 and 2021. And also those not the by-elections, too much by-elections in my mind. The coalition agreements should be made public for everyone in the city or the province to see, that they know exactly what each party is getting out of it, what the coalition aims are of that multi-party coalition, what are the shared objectives, what are they going to try achieve and accomplish within the first year, 2 years, etc.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on, Wayne Sussman, and Thami Ntuli, Executive Committee member for the Inkatha Freedom Party. I beg your pardon.